There is a strange moment that happens when you have been worried for so long that you no longer notice you are worrying. You wake up and immediately think about what could go wrong. You check your phone. You replay yesterday's conversation. You calculate whether you have made the right decision. You think about money, work, your relationship, your health, your family, the future. And beneath all of it is one quiet assumption. If I think about this enough, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening. It feels responsible. It even feels intelligent. But what if much of what you call preparation is actually fear wearing the clothes of responsibility? You cannot control what someone will decide about you. You cannot guarantee that your plans will succeed. You cannot know what tomorrow will bring. And yet, the mind keeps trying. It rehearses conversations that have not happened. It imagines failures that may never arrive. It searches for certainty in places where certainty does not exist. Carl Jung understood something important about this struggle. The anxious mind is often not trying to solve life. It is trying to escape the discomfort of not knowing, and that distinction changes everything. Because once you understand why the mind worries, you can begin to stop fighting uncertainty and start living differently. The first thing you discover is that worry gives you the illusion of control. Think about the last time you were deeply anxious about something. Maybe you were waiting for an important answer, a job application, a medical result, a difficult conversation, a decision from someone you love. While you waited, your mind probably produced dozens of possibilities. If they say no, then what? What if this goes badly? What if I should have done something differently? What if I am making a mistake? Notice what happens. Nothing has changed in reality, but inside your mind, an entire world has been constructed. This is where the conscious ego becomes trapped. Jung did not consider the ego evil. We need it. It helps us make decisions, maintain our identity, navigate responsibilities, and function in ordinary life. The problem begins when the ego assumes that it must predict everything before it can allow us to feel safe. Uncertainty becomes danger, an unanswered question becomes a threat, and imagination begins presenting possibilities as though they were facts. That is why worry can feel so convincing. The mind does not say, "This is only one possibility." It says, "Look what might happen." And because the possibility feels emotionally real, the body responds as though the event has already arrived. You become exhausted from fighting battles that exist only in your imagination. This is one of the great differences between preparation and worry. Preparation asks, "What can I actually do?" Worry asks, "What else could possibly go wrong?" Preparation ends when action is complete. Worry keeps going. You prepare for the interview. Then you worry about how you performed. You make the financial plan. Then you worry about every possible change in the economy. You have the conversation. Then you replay every sentence you said. At some point, thinking stops serving reality and begins serving fear. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes remarkably practical. Epictetus drew a clear distinction between what belongs to us and what does not. Your judgment belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. Your effort belongs to you. But another person's opinion does not. The future does not. The final outcome does not. The moment you stop demanding control over what was never yours to control, an enormous amount of mental energy becomes available again. Because worry is expensive, not only emotionally. Psychologically, you can spend an entire day thinking without actually moving your life forward. You answer no emails, you make no decision, you take no meaningful action, yet by evening you feel exhausted. Why? Because your mind has been working constantly. But mental activity is not the same thing as useful action. Imagine sitting in a car with the engine running while the vehicle never leaves the driveway. The engine is working, fuel is being consumed, noise is being produced. But you are not going anywhere. An anxious mind can function the same way. It produces thoughts endlessly without transforming them into action. And eventually, you begin to mistake exhaustion for progress. This is why some people spend years preparing for a life they never actually begin. They want the perfect plan before starting the business, the perfect confidence before changing careers, the perfect certainty before leaving a relationship, the perfect guarantee before making a difficult decision. But life rarely gives guarantees first. Sometimes action must come before certainty. You do not need to know that the road will be safe before taking the next step. You only need to know what the next honest step is. There is another layer beneath worry that is even more uncomfortable. Sometimes we are not afraid of what will happen. We are afraid of what happens will say about us. That distinction is easy to miss. A person may say they are terrified of losing their job, but underneath that, fear may be another thought. What will people think of me? Someone may fear a failed business. But underneath it may be, maybe this proves I am not capable. Someone may fear rejection, but underneath it may be, maybe I am not worthy of being chosen. This is where Jung's idea of the persona becomes useful. The persona is the social identity we present to the world, the successful professional, the dependable parent, the strong friend, the intelligent person, the person who always has everything together. There is nothing wrong with having these roles. The danger comes when you forget that they are roles. When your profession becomes your identity, a career setback feels like the destruction of the self. When being admired becomes your identity, criticism feels unbearable. When being strong becomes your identity, admitting weakness feels like failure. You are no longer protecting your life. You are protecting an image, and that image demands constant maintenance. You have to appear successful. You have to appear certain. You have to appear happy. You have to appear in control. No wonder you are tired. Imagine carrying a heavy suitcase everywhere you go because you are afraid that if you put it down, someone might see what is inside. Eventually, you forget that you are the one carrying it. This is what happens when the ego becomes attached to an image. The world does not need to attack you. A small change is enough. Someone misunderstands you. Someone stops praising you. A plan fails. A relationship changes. You make a mistake. Suddenly, the event is not merely an event. It becomes evidence against the person you believe you are. And the more fragile that identity becomes, the more you worry. This is why peace cannot come simply from making life more predictable. You could control every detail of your schedule and still feel deeply unsafe. Because the deeper problem is not always the outside world. It is the belief that you must remain a certain person in order to be worthy. Once you begin releasing that belief, something unexpected happens. Silence becomes possible. And silence is important because the anxious mind is loud, very loud. It tells you what everyone might think, what tomorrow might bring, what you should have done, what you must prevent, what you cannot afford to lose. When every internal voice is competing for your attention, you may mistake noise for intuition. But intuition does not usually arrive as panic. It does not need to shout. Sometimes the clearest answer appears only after you stop forcing yourself to find it. You have probably experienced this before. You struggle with a problem for hours, nothing works. Then you take a shower, go for a walk, drive somewhere, or simply sleep. And suddenly, the answer appears. The problem did not magically solve itself. Your mind finally had enough space to see what constant effort had hidden. This is one reason stillness matters. Not because you should abandon thinking, but because thinking needs space. A mind that never becomes quiet cannot distinguish between a genuine problem and a fearful possibility. So try something simple. When you notice yourself worrying, do not immediately ask, "How do I make this stop?" Ask, "What is actually happening right now?" Then ask, "What part of this is within my control?" And finally, what am I afraid this situation says about me? That third question can be surprisingly revealing. You may discover that the real fear has nothing to do with the event itself. You are not afraid of the meeting. You are afraid of looking incompetent. You are not afraid of being alone for one evening. You are afraid that being alone means nobody needs you. You are not afraid of changing direction. You are afraid that admitting you chose the wrong path will damage the identity you built around that choice. Once the hidden fear becomes conscious, it loses some of its power. You can see it instead of automatically obeying it. And this is where Jung's idea of becoming more conscious becomes practical. You do not defeat anxiety by arguing with every thought. You become less controlled by it, by learning to recognize what is happening inside you. There is a profound difference between saying, "I am in danger," and "part of me is afraid that I might be in danger." The first statement becomes an identity. The second creates distance. That distance gives you a choice, and choice is where freedom begins. This does not mean that everything will suddenly work out exactly as you want. That would be another form of control. Stopping worry does not guarantee success. It changes your relationship with uncertainty. You still prepare, you still work, you still save money, you still have difficult conversations, you still make plans. But you stop demanding that your plans become guarantees. You do what belongs to you, and then you allow reality to answer. This is where life can begin to feel strangely lighter, not because the problems disappear, but because you stop adding an unnecessary second problem to every real problem. There is the difficulty itself, and then there is your mental resistance to the fact that the difficulty exists. Someone does not approve of you. That is one problem. Spending 3 days trying to control their opinion is another. A project fails. That is painful. Spending months convincing yourself that the failure proves you are a failure creates another wound. The Stoic response is not indifference, it is proportion. See what happened. Feel what you feel. Take responsibility for what is yours. Learn what can be learned. Then release the part that belongs to reality. This is also where Jung's idea of individuation becomes meaningful. To become yourself, you must gradually separate your real values from the expectations you have absorbed. You begin asking, do I actually want this? Or do I want to be admired for having it? Is this my decision? Or am I afraid of disappointing someone? Am I pursuing this because it matters? Or because I need it to prove something about me? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they can also return your life to you. And once you stop organizing your entire existence around avoiding disapproval, something remarkable happens. You become more willing to act. You say no without explaining yourself for 20 minutes. You admit when you are wrong. You change direction when something no longer fits. You allow someone to misunderstand you without immediately trying to repair their opinion. You stop checking whether everyone approves of your choices. You become less interested in controlling perception and more interested in living according to your values. That is freedom. Not getting everything you want, not eliminating uncertainty, not making the future obey you. Freedom is being able to remain yourself when the future refuses to cooperate. And perhaps this is what people mean when they say that everything begins to go well after they stop worrying. It does not mean the universe suddenly rearranges itself. It means their attention returns, their energy returns, their judgment becomes clearer. They notice opportunities they were previously too anxious to see. They listen more carefully. They make better decisions. They stop chasing every possibility and begin recognizing which possibilities actually matter. Life may not become easier, but their way of meeting life becomes wiser. The future is still uncertain. People can still leave. Plans can still fail. You can still make mistakes. But you no longer need certainty before allowing yourself to breathe. That may be the deepest form of peace available to us. Not the peace that comes after everything has been resolved. The peace that exists while some things remain unresolved. So the next time you catch yourself worrying about something you cannot control, pause. Do not fight the thought. Do not shame yourself for having it. Simply notice it. Ask what it is trying to protect. Then return to what is real. What can you do today? What decision belongs to you? What value do you want to embody? And what must simply be allowed to unfold? You may discover that the life you were trying so desperately to control was never asking you to control it. It was asking you to participate in it. There is a quiet difference between holding life tightly and holding yourself steadily. The first creates anxiety. The second creates strength. When you stop needing the future to guarantee your safety, you become capable of meeting whatever the future brings. And when you stop needing other people to confirm who you are, their opinions lose the power to define you. Perhaps that is what finally happens when worry falls silent. Nothing outside you becomes perfect. You simply stop requiring perfection before you permit yourself to live. You prepare when preparation is useful. You act when action is possible. You accept when control ends. And then you keep walking. Not because you know exactly where the road will lead, but because you finally trust yourself enough to meet the next part when it arrives. If this perspective changed the way you see your own worries, stay with that thought for a while, and when you're ready, watch the next video, where we go even deeper into the quiet strength that comes from no longer needing the world to understand you.